I think that his behavior in the courtroom has gotten better. And that's not saying much since the bar was pretty low. He's finally obeying and following some simple instructions given to him by the judge, who's given him tons of leeway. He is making absolutely coherent and pretty appropriate objections and cross-examination questions. Now, does everything he says make sense? Absolutely not. And is it so strange to hear somebody either talk in the third person or say, well, did I do that? Did Brooks do that? When he is Brooks. The highlight of the day was cross-examining his ex, where whenever you have to ask the question, did I hit you in the face or did I punch you in the face? It's not going well for you. And he had to talk about that a lot with the first day with his ex's friend and today with his ex. Now, some things that he's doing well is he's taking each individual witness as they are. Some of the eyewitnesses to where the car went in the parade. He said, well, you didn't see who was in the car, right? Right. Okay. Good point. Now kind of move on. He made some points about, I actually think the judge has been incredibly, as nice as the judge has been to him and as lenient as the judge has been to him, the judge is immediately sustaining objections by the state and cutting him off. She stopped him in the cross-examination of his ex. And she, sorry, I'm reading some questions coming in here. She stops him because he was asking the same question over and over again, badgering the witness, asking if she was intoxicated, if that affected her memory, things like that. But in reality, I actually think the judge has made a couple mistakes. And I don't like saying that. I don't try to get clickbait or say, oh, this judge is screwing up, let's jump into it. I actually think this judge has been great. And the hardest part of her job has been just dealing with the circus. And she's done great with that. But when he was asking, I believe it was his ex's friend, if she was a good friend of the ex's, if they were intoxicated, if they had gone out together, she stopped him after a while and said it was irrelevant. And the judge actually said it without the state even objecting. And I think the judge was completely wrong. And if I was representing Mr. Brooks, I would have said, Judge, this absolutely goes to her. Oh, and then what did she say in the police statement versus what did she say now? Why didn't she say some of the curse words or that they brawled up or chested up or he smacked her to the ground and she got up and smacked him and things like that, right? So that's irrelevant, improperly asking those questions. Baloney, because it's relevant, even if it doesn't go to whether or not he drove the car through the parade. But when we're talking about a witness who's taking the stand, who's testifying against the defendant, if he has any way to attack her credibility or show that she's biased against him, he has to be able to ask her those questions. And I think he should have been able to impeach her over and over and over again with her prior statements, her relationship with his ex, how she feels about him, how she thinks about him, whether she's lied before, same thing with the ex. Have you told a police officer you made a false report before? Anything like that. So to me, I think that was a miss by the judge. Okay, so we'll just kind of get that out. But for the most part, a lot of his objections make no sense. I saw this question come in. John O'Rourke, do you see the plaintiff in the room? I see other people asking about, what's he talking about with the plaintiff? I believe he's talking about the state. And I think this is part of his sovereign citizen thing. And that's why they keep objecting, saying, what are you talking about? Because he's not saying the victims. He's saying the plaintiff bringing this case, which is the state. And to me, I feel like he's trying to make this about going against the government and the government's out to get him. That's what I'm thinking. But honestly, getting inside this guy's head is not something I want to do, right? It is very weird and it makes no sense. And I'm sure the jury's picking up on that. Tori, why does he keep asking the judge if she is making a judicial decision? Because this is, again, goes back to him being a sovereign citizen. So he's saying, is this part of the rule of law? Is this a statute or is this a judicial decision? because I do not consent to that judicial decision. He does not consent to being called the defendant. He does not consent to being called Darrell. So we've seen that throughout the case. Katie, I do not think it went to the level of making that a reversible error. I do not. I don't think the judge has done anything. The judge has been commendable in this case. No judge is going to be perfect throughout an entire trial, especially a trial like this. Suzanne, thanks for the super sticker. So we also saw the judge continue to compliment him for following simple instructions. Sounds like I'm talking to my 6-year-old. Thank you for staying seated when I asked you to stay seated. Thank you for standing. Thank you for following. Thank you for not screaming and having outbursts and slamming things. He has gone back and forth from the other room. But the judge is complimenting him. I think she's trying to continue to give him confidence. I think the state, I think the judge, I think everybody's working together to try and get this case finalized and to the jury. That's what I think is behind all of this. And I think that everybody's doing a great job keeping a good and clean record for appeal at this point. Let's see. Oh, somebody else asked me, I believe on Twitter or Instagram, why are they sitting down while they're making their arguments or questioning the witnesses? Well, that's a judicial preference. That's a judicial decision, right? Thank you, Elizabeth, as well. And if the judge wants you to stand up and make your argument, you better believe you're gonna. This judge also said that they don't have to stand up when the jury comes in the room, which made it seem like the judge usually does have the lawyers do that. But at this time, she's not making the lawyers stand up when the jury comes in the room. And I think she's doing that because she knows that Mr. Brooks may not stand up and the jury could take disrespect from that. So she's trying to protect Mr. Brooks. I also think that he's wearing an orange jumpsuit and obviously coming from prison, and she doesn't want to draw attention to that, having him stand up and sit down a bunch. So I think she is trying to limit the negative bias or attention that may come towards the defendant in this case. Mo, he actually got a video thrown out because it mentioned prior bad acts. I'm assuming that is a motion in lemony. Yes, and he's actually won some objections, and he's actually asked some decent questions and got some decent points, which I think is all really good. And the other reason everybody's complimenting him is because they want everybody to understand he's competent. He's not only competent to stand trial, he's competent and able to represent himself as good as anyone can. That's not a lawyer. So this should not be an appellate issue that he doesn't have a lawyer. All very, very interesting stuff.